Thank you, Mr. Leader. When a lot of people ask me, how do you connect regulations and job growth? Well, how do you connect those? Why do you say that excessive and overly burdensome regulation negatively impacts job growth or the ability to create jobs? And that's based on a number of things. First of all, my constituents tell me that. I had a jobs conference in Little Rock at the Clinton Library, and we had a number of people representing small and big businesses, and they indicated that over-regulation, the uncertainty created by regulation, as they cited that as their number one concern. But you also have articles like in The Economist, by no means an extreme magazine, I would say a highly regarded mainstream magazine. The Economist committed a cover story and numerous articles in that particular edition to the impact that over-regulation, excessive regulation, is having in the American economy. And if you don't believe those sources, the President said in January of 2011, sometimes federal regulations have gotten out of balance, placing unreasonable burdens on business, burdens that have stifled innovation and have had a chilling effect on growth and jobs. So it seems to me we should be able to agree that over-regulation, excessive regulation, negatively impacts the economy and the ability to grow jobs. So the question is, what are we doing about it? And in the House, we're not just talking about it. We've already passed the REINS Act, which is an attempt at regulatory reform. And now we have this package, which is very targeted, not as broad as the REINS Act, but my particular part of the bill basically says we're going to have a timeout. We're going to have a timeout so businesses can figure out the nightmare that they have just experienced in terms of the massive onslaught of regulations over the past few years. Now, what you will hear from the President and from some on the other side is that if you look at the number of regulations, well, President Obama is right there in the ballpark with President Bush and others. What they don't tell you is, if you look at the number of significant regulations or major regulations, those are the regulations that have a big impact on the economy, $100 million or more in terms of their impact. If you look at those, in the few short years of President Obama's administration, he has promulgated 4 to 5 times what President Bush did in 8 years. Those are the real numbers you need to be looking at. And those are the regulations that I hear so much about. So what my bill would do is freeze pending regulations with some exceptions. And in fact, one very large exception, a waiver, where the President can offer up any regulation that he thinks ought to be put into effect. He can propose it to the Congress, just like in the REINS Act. And if we think it's a good idea, then we can back it and it'll go into effect. And I would also, in closing, make it very clear that I'm not anti-regulation. It's the excessive and overly burdensome regulations, the ones that don't make sense, the ones that target a particular action, but when implemented, the people that have to live with it every day tell me this misses the mark. Oftentimes, in the laboratory up here in Washington, a regulation may sound like a good idea or look like a good idea. But if you don't adequately consult and consider the opinions of the folks on the ground who have to live with it, you will often miss the mark. We're trying to take a time out from that. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, the author of Title II, Representative Ribble.